All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the IKEA webinar on building a winning corporate culture. I'm Mike Lawrence, and April Wansick is with me as well. Let's get started. So the pizza party didn't work. And here we go. Nobody objects to a pizza party or free donuts or anything like that, at the company. But it takes more than a pizza party to get into everybody's good graces and to make harder workers and to lift morale. It's hard to say to somebody, hey, remember those free donuts we gave you last Tuesday? Now I'm going to need you to come in and work the weekend. It doesn't quite work like that. But building a winning corporate culture doesn't just happen. It needs to be shaped, cultivated, monitored. Essentially, you have to take the fun out of culture to make it work. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today and just try to establish and understand meaning behind different corporate culture initiatives and the like, and how you adhere to corporate values and all of that.
We'll also take a look here at really what are the highlights. We'll give you a few examples of companies that have found success through their corporate culture, get us thinking about what corporate culture can be, how it relates to you as individuals, and to your companies and organizations.
Yeah, what we're going to find through the next 45 minutes here, you really can't just do culture. Even though it's all well and good to give it a try, there's a lot more to it. So who are these voices that you're listening to right now? Let's put a face to the voices you're listening to. And I am going to introduce April for you. April Wansick has been at IKEA for about 6 years. She is the Director of Account Services. She manages a department of 24 people. And I have to say, I've witnessed her. She sets a fantastic example. She motivates, she teaches, she guides, while shaping the direction of the agency and the department she leads, all while adhering to the values that IKEA has come to be defined by. Essentially, she helps to present a foundation for our winning culture. But beyond that, beyond her work life, I do know about April. She's a graduate of Ohio University. Go Bobcats. If you happen to be in the Steubenville area back in the early 2000s, she was a producer anchor at WTUV. And she has a couple of kids. Kayla, going into the 6th grade, she's a soccer star, a basketball star. And Jaden, her younger son, he is not shy. I've had the opportunity to meet him, and I understand why his nickname is Hollywood. And they have a pool.
So why is Mike sharing all of those things about me? Well, it's just to prove how much we as a culture here at IKEA get to know more than just the coworker. We get to know the person who we get to interact with day after day. And so I get the pleasure of introducing you to Mike Lawrence. Mike is one of our 2 creative directors here at the agency. He's been with us about 4 years. If you've had the opportunity to work with him, you know right away how smart and witty he is, what a talented creative copywriter he is, and serves as a mentor and leader here at the agency, not just for the creative team, but for everyone within the agency. He definitely embraces our values and inspires those around him. I'd like to also introduce you to Mike, the person outside of IKEA. He's one of those fellow Ohio University Bobcats. We've got 2 of us here on the line today. He's an avid sports fan, a dedicated family man. Know that he has 2 children as well. Abby is a high schooler and a cross-country athlete, and his son Craig is a baseball and basketball star. He recently survived building a new home and completing the move into it. So we're excited to be with you here today.
Yeah, we're very excited about this overall webinar, just from what April and I have witnessed in our years working different places we've worked, how different corporate cultures have worked well, others not so well. We're very excited to talk about this today. So, what would you say it is you do here?
So we're looking at talking to you about ways maybe you haven't thought of culture before, or maybe reinforce what you already know. We'd like to also look at ways that culture plays a very important role in maintaining an engaged and energetic workforce. It can be a very impactful recruiting tool to help you attract top talent and help boost the bottom line. And we want to make sure that we also kind of turn the lens on ourselves here at IKEA and take a look at our own culture, which we'd like to admit is a really good one, and we can dive into those reasons why.
Yeah, we we've noticed that sometimes people think of culture as what is absent work in a corporation or organization, and work is the things you do that is absent culture. What we want to show today is how interrelated those two things are, how a good corporate culture helps enhance productivity, and that it's more than just smiling employees getting along with each other. You know, it's one thing if people are happy, but are they happy doing the work there? But really, there could be a claim that it's very, very easy to establish a winning corporate culture. I mean, you look at this from The Onion. I understand it not to be one of the more reputable news sources, but we did come across this article when we were Google searching winning corporate cultures. Boss wants friendly, relaxed company culture in place by Friday. And of course, it's a satirical website, The Onion there, but just getting to the idea that, oh, it should be so easy. You know, if the boss asks for, I need 5 ideas to save the company money, you could do that. Unfortunately, establishing a winning corporate culture or cultivating one isn't so simple. It's a little more subjective. Sometimes you just, I guess you got to leave it to chance. You got to leave it to faith. Got to leave it to the people. But luckily, you can put that foundation in place to make it work.
We'd like to think with the winning culture in place, a lot of everything else that you do every day at work, the meetings, the execution, the employee reviews, the work itself, all of that about your business becomes a little bit easier.
Okay. So we were thinking, all right, we could look at different corporations right off the bat, real ones, but let's take a look at 2,000 years of corporate culture depicted through pop culture entertainment. This won't take long at all. So let's take a quick look. Number 1, Ben-Hur. You might recognize old Charlton Heston there as he rows a boat with his fellow employees. And if you were a manager, back in this type of corporate culture was awesome. It was the good old days. People worked together. Nobody complained. If they did complain, they were shown the door. A lot of teamwork is going on. You know, teamwork makes the dream work. And the hours were terrible. There were no breaks, no air conditioning, no dental plan. But the employees got things done. And at the same time, there was a certain dress code as well, I guess, if you could say. Yeah, certain uniform. Nobody came in, had to adhere to a certain style. This is what it was. So let's jump ahead about 2,000 years. You know, how did corporate culture change? A little bit. Here's the movie The Apartment, a scene from there starring Jack Lemmon. Now, it's a little like Ben-Hur with some air conditioning and a little more comfortable chairs, but it's very traditional. There's a cube farm, you know, almost symmetrical. There's a cube, and there's another cube, and there's another cube. And there's somebody in a suit and a tie, nothing too flashy. Any type of quote-unquote culture was limited to maybe a coffee break, but you sure didn't want to get caught by the boss. And then, you know, that unhealthy fluorescent lighting. Sometimes it makes me think, if you look at a picture of somebody from back in the 50s or the 60s or even the 70s, everybody looks older than they really were. Gee, Dad, were you 50 then? No, I was 28. But that's more of a quick look at that traditional, very traditional look back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. All right, so let's jump ahead about a generation here.
Now we've jumped way ahead, and I'm sure you recognize this cast. This is The Office, and what we like about this is definitely now there's diversity in the workplace, people from all walks of life and ages, but they're all trying to work towards a single goal. You have the boss who cares. He wants it to be a fun place to work. He desperately wants to fit in, although we know that isn't always the case with what he actually wanted, didn't always achieve it. But there are attempts at culture. The office holiday party, if you remember that with the Yankee swap, maybe doesn't always work. Not a high-pressure atmosphere, but the one fun thing about The Office, if you think about it, we started to get to see the workplace through a diverse group of different perspectives. We got to see behind the scenes of what Pam, the office secretary, was thinking, and Jim would only have to give one quick look at the camera, and right away you knew what his perspective was. So we start to take into consideration the different perspectives, the variety of people, the diverse group that starts to make up what is that office environment.
Yep. And now we'll wrap it up full circle, the last one of these pop culture. You might recognize this is a comic from The Far Side. So it's like Ben-Hur, but in this case, the comic, and I'll read it to you. There's the guy on the right there. He says, "Yoo-hoo, yoo-hoo, I think I'm getting a blister." Far cry from Ben-Hur. But what this is also showing, in addition to just being humorous here, is that may seem ridiculous, that request. You know, who in their right mind during there would complain about a blister? Just get back to work. But as we're now in more modern times, managers get their share of requests. There's more accessibility, and employees expect to be listened to, even if it may seem out of place to senior leadership here. You know, we've personally seen our share of requests, you know, at IKEA in different places we work. People who want, hey, I want plants for my workspace. Can you pay for that for me? You know, and we may all have those little requests that come out. The point being here with this Far Side joke is employees expect you to listen, not just hear, you know, not just, you know, you heard me, but listen and react and follow up. And employees are more apt to speak up today. We've developed this open door policy and more accessibility, where it used to be, hey, you would say, my door is always open, but it was somewhat rhetorical. But now you say, my door is always open, and people are taking you up on it, and they're coming in.
I think another, challenge employers are facing today is the fact that there is diversity in workforce from a generation standpoint. For the first time, we have 3 different generations all maybe working under the same roof at an organization, being that Millennials, Gen X, and Baby Boomers, and trying to find a way to balance and satisfy what each of those groups value most. And don't forget, Gen Z is coming. They're on the horizon. So how do we start to take into account all of those different things that each one of those groups values most from an organization and the culture that comes with it?
Okay. So yeah, that was the quick 2,000-year look. We had Ben-Hur, we had The Apartment, we had The Office, and we had the Far Side jokes there. So it leads to a question, if you want to look at yourself a little bit. Which of those may reflect your corporate culture, or one you may have experienced? Is it Ben-Hur, The Apartment, The Office, The Far Side, or something else? Okay. All right, so I think
Counting those.
Collecting those answers, yep. All right, so it looks like more of a majority of the answers kind of fell in line with D, the Far Side there. Employees expecting that open door, listen to me, I have something to say. Okay. All right.
So that falls in line with perfectly where we're taking you next, because there is a lot of power with engaged employees. Strong company culture is just one of those key ingredients in building an engaged workforce. We know that the engaged employee is perhaps one of your most important and powerful assets, and also one of the most important audiences as well. Your employees can be kind of categorized into these 3 buckets that really help drive your business. One being, brand ambassadors, a key component out there fostering your brand and humanizing your identity to those multiple audiences, be it customers, shareholders, maybe it's the communities in which you operate, or even prospective employees. Your employees are also those recruiting advocates. You've been out in a social setting and someone asks you, oh, where do you work? Or how's work going for you? And what your employees say matters most in building your reputation. It can also help when it comes to attracting the best and brightest, because if your employees are out there talking about the great environment, the culture you have, the values that your company holds close, that would help then to attract similar types of people to your organization. And then we also see employees being keys to organizational success. Study after study is showing that employees who understand the company's goals and how their role is helping to achieve those are more engaged in helping your business reach those goals and objectives, and really helps to just foster more business success.
Yeah, it's certainly an exponential type relationship. The better they know the goals, the more engaged they're going to be. The more engaged they're going to be, the better they know the company goals and work towards it, and that's where you want that foundation in place. All right. So we're going to look at a few numbers here, because we talked about engagement before. And you can quantify engagement and the effect that lack of engagement from employees can have on a company here.
Yeah, employees who aren't engaged can really cost a company in real dollars. If you look at that first stat there, $11 billion is lost annually due to employee turnover. So keeping an engaged workforce is critical to the bottom line. And especially when you see the next number that then goes on to say 30 to 40% of the workforce claims that they aren't even engaged at work. So there's some making up of we need to do in order to make sure that employees do feel that they're bought into what the organization stands for and those values that they hold close.
Yeah, and there's certainly something to be said about the sustainability of a winning corporate culture, so that 30 to 40% at your company would be much lower. But then you look at the 30% of employees leave within the first 6 months of being hired. That's almost staggering to hear that. But it's not just that you have a sustained winning culture, but one that makes a great first impression right away. Because people are, when they're hired, they're testing out the place they're working. Is this the right fit for me? Because they're looking for, I think, the perfect job, the perfect environment. But then also we got these real costs involved, but just think of the other type of peripheral costs that are associated. If people are leaving, does that create some sort of vacuum effect, that somebody who may have been at the company for 5 years, but somebody they've worked with leaves, suddenly that person who's been there 5 years may be thinking, well, maybe it's time for me to have a change, or if people are leaving, maybe I should too. They consider it. Maybe the grass is greener somewhere. Also, the cost of if somebody leaves or isn't engaged, okay, maybe the ideas aren't as good or people aren't as productive. They're just going through the motions rather than really being committed to the goals of the company and the success as well. Okay. So we're going to look at some companies that have done corporate culture well, but we want to say that, yes, Google ruined it for everyone. That may be an overstatement, but we're talking about Google in the terms that all these Silicon Valley type of companies offered a lot of perks, and if some of these are made up, some of them are true. Who knows what's legend and what's fact? Hammocks and nap rooms and personal baristas and free dog walking and all sorts of stuff like that, exercise rooms and trampolines and pinball machines and who knows. But when some people would read, well, this is what Google had, and Google is considered a great place to work, the impression may be, oh, it's a great place to work because Google has hammocks. Well, maybe it's not the hammock that's doing it. Google has a reason behind the nap room, behind the hammock. It's not necessarily to be nice to an employee. Hey, why don't you take a load off? You look tired. No, it's the idea that some of these employees are working around the clock, and we should give them a rest instead of sending them home. If they go home, they may not come back for a while, but if they're here, you give them a cat nap, and they have that certain amount of energy. So there's a purpose behind these perks. It's not just necessarily to be nice, even though those perks see the light of day, and they're talked about, like April had mentioned, when people are talking about their jobs, what they have. So what we're going to show you on the next slide are just some examples of corporations that have done corporate culture well, and there's a variety of different types as well. Big companies, smaller companies, newer companies, old companies. Okay.
Yeah, this is a nice snapshot of, companies who we think have figured it out. They knew what they wanted, what their values were, what made sense for them and their organization, and then put the strong corporate culture into action. And that is very specific to what worked for them and for their employees. I think that's a big part of what we're going to share today, is that it's not a one-size-fits-all culture. It's going to be what is customized and feels natural and right for where your business is. A lot of this, too, is identifying that the culture was designed to help elevate what the company sells or offers. It makes good business sense for them to have the culture in place. It's not just culture for the sake of having culture. So if we look at one example, that first one being Zappos, if you're familiar with Zappos, you know that customer service drives them. And to that end, they know that if they have the right people who are upbeat, very service-oriented, that personality aligns to what the public persona is that they try to convey. and they will actually go through a cultural fit interview to make sure that they continue to attract that same type of employee. It's more than just what is a great resume that will stand out. It's also what are those soft metrics from a personality fit and a cultural fit that really matter. I think it's very telling that they will offer anyone who is looking to leave the company after 6 months, you are welcome to leave, and we'll give you $2,000 to do so, because that's very telling that they don't want anyone who doesn't want to be there, and they're looking for those employees who will embrace the culture they have in place and the values that that they stand for. So I think if you had to look at, the moral of this example is make sure that you're looking to hire according to a cultural fit before anything else.
Yeah, that $2,000 bonus to leave is a real innovative and unique approach. Maybe others would follow it, but if you're among the first to come up with something that's innovative and unique, like when Google did the hammocks or whatever at the time, that was original, but as others follow suit, not as original, maybe not as effective, but with Zappos being among the first to do that is very, very clever, and it's a good selling point for your company. Moving on, Chevron, another example. We wanted to call that out because it shows that you don't need to move heaven and earth to create a corporate culture that employees really like. You look at Chevron, it's oil and gas. It's not the most glamorous. It's not the tech industry, it's not Zappos and selling shoes online where people like the purchase. It's oil and gas, and it's a big, big company. But I think Chevron understood what kind of company they were and what their employees would be looking for. So they did supply certain perks like health club membership, a certain amount of breaks, a sense of safety and looking out for each other, especially in the oil and gas field. It's not always the most safe field or doesn't have a reputation as such. But what Chevron's able to do and why they're always seen as very high when it comes to employee surveys and satisfaction is the employees understand, yes, this is a company that's looking out for me, that has my best interest at heart. And sometimes that's really all you need to do. This shows that they're appreciated, they feel rewarded in such way. And that's why Chevron's a good example.
We also wanted to take a look at GM. That's a behemoth of a company, huge organization. So it's not just a matter of getting, a water cooler in a break room. There's probably multiple layers of approvals in order to get anything in place. But with a new CEO on board, understood that there was a need to shake up the culture that wouldn't completely shake up the company. It's not just something that can be done with the snap of a finger in an organization that big, but there were some small things that they could start to implement that would have some nice impacts for them. They first understood that leadership needed to adjust the way they did business planning and created a consistent process with goals and reviews. One example is they started to set up quarterly 2-day retreats focused on just interacting with one another rather than setting what would be a business strategy. It was an adjustment of focus rather than adjusting everything, and we like to think that they knew how to turn this ship around without wrecking it. So if you're looking at how you can implement a culture, maybe it's starting with some small things that are more manageable changes.
Yeah, I think GM understood that they weren't Google or Facebook. It would be difficult for the CEO to come in and just shake things up completely. Oh, now we're going to have a nap room and all this sort of stuff. It would fall flat, and people would be scratching their heads rather than, buying into it there. And we have some other examples there as well, Southwest being fun, Warby Parker, dedicated to certain events and things like that. Okay. So we'll drill down a little bit more, and we're going to talk about ourselves a little bit, IKEA, because we had seen some, I guess what you might say is some troubling stats before when it came to engagement. But here we have, these are the results of IKEA's employee engagement survey from Q4 last year. And some of these numbers that, came out that shows, okay, maybe we have a good culture here. We're doing something right.
Yeah, we'd like to think that maybe this also helps legitimize Mike and myself as, witnesses to what a strong corporate culture can do for your business. Those troubling stats, we've been fortunate, haven't been so troubling with us, but that doesn't mean that we're just sitting back and taking it easy. We still have a very heavy focus on culture. We continuously look to see where it may be coming up short, determine adjustments, what new ideas that would still be consistent with our culture and our values, because we know that it doesn't take long if it's unattended for things to go stale. So where does this IKEA culture come from? It isn't something that we just spent a week on and turned it on. It's actually been 20 years in the making, from when our CEO, Jan Gusick, founded the company. It's something that is never finished, and it's literally a balancing act where we try to make sure that it is a nice balance between work and fun. We like to think that we work hard but then also play hard, and these numbers we like to think are pretty good. Almost everyone would recommend IKEA to their friends as a great place to work, and our turnover rate is very low.
Yeah, you see how these things are interrelated. Yes, we have a low turnover rate, and people would refer it to a friend. And those numbers would be good if, yeah, it was just a fun place to work. But if the fun place to work, wasn't bringing in adequate revenue and things like that, well, it wouldn't be a fun place to work for long. So we have, 12% growth over the last 5 years. The business aspect has been paying off. And that 95% say employees treat each other with respect. That's just something that builds, that mutual respect that shows people are bought into this culture that we've established. But like April said, it's something we got to keep on. We need new ideas, unique ideas to help nurture that culture so it doesn't get stale or that some negative effect or outside force comes in and sends it all south. So they call out that balance day thing right in the middle column there.
So Balance Day kind of emerged as a way that we wanted to make sure we're giving our employees the flexibility where they could work a 4-day work week, knowing that in this business no one is ever completely, quote, off. It can be 24 hours a day with the emails, the revisions, the concepting, the writing, the communication. So nearly a year ago we implemented this Balance Day program so that employees would have the option to work a 4-day work week, and what we've seen is as a result, we've been able to be 7% more efficient as an agency, and that's been tracked through some of our monthly hour utilization reporting. So it's helped to combat what we would see as a potential for burnout, a unique way to keep productivity up, and we still have everyone, the office is still staffed 5 days a week. It's just a rotating team structure so that there's at least someone who can always get your back on the day that you might be out of the office. We've seen employees really take advantage of this. So now that they have a little bit more balance in their personal lives, maybe run errands, make appointments, have time with your kids at home, or maybe go to the park with your dog, it's really been a nice benefit to the work life here, and also very true to the culture we have in place.
Yeah, because we've saw that there may have been some diminishing returns. You got this 5-day work week where people are just working around the clock, and it's like, where's the break? So we mentioned unique, innovative ideas before, but you've probably seen summer hours and taking Friday afternoons off, and we had considered that, but we took that idea and sort of turned it on its head a little bit. That's where the 4-day work week comes in, where, all right, half the staff is in from Monday through Thursday, the other half is in from like Tuesday through Friday, but you're never totally off. And this has had a lot of good effects for us. The turnover rate is way down. People are able to, run their errands and things like that on their balance day, but it's also they have more energy on the days they are here. They're working more hours on the days they are here, and they're putting more into each hour. But that's not to say that balance day could work anywhere. We didn't implement this figuring, turn the machine on and let's see what happens. We had an understanding when we put this into place that we have a good team, we have a team that we can trust, and they trust each other and they have each other's backs because they wanted balance day to work. This isn't something they would want taken away there. And like April said, and people are more efficient with it, so we're getting more out of these hours. It was a real win for us, and it helps with retention and turnover and productivity. Go ahead.
So if we turn the lens on ourselves, we'd like to think that at IKEA we're all in this together. We are more apt to enjoy the fun times together too. We know that we develop an exponentially bit of bonding. We bond in fun and we bond in work. And if you look at the photos here, we like to call out that we even have an employee who's dressed as a hot dog. I mean, what says culture and fun and employee bonding than, you know, someone willing to come in costume? But
volunteer
to do that, right. But our culture is a big part of who we are. I mentioned, you know, Jan Gusick, our CEO, founder of the company 20 years ago. It's very much in line with our service-oriented model. Her saying has always been, if you take care of the client, the rest takes care of itself. And with our mission, still to this day, to serve our clients beyond their expectations in everything that we do, we like to make sure then that we're also taking care of each other as employees. Jan's very open and candid about talking about her early days in her career where maybe the workplace wasn't so flexible and understanding of those employees who are trying to balance family and career, and has always made it a priority to make sure she can give back to employees in a way that maybe she didn't get to benefit from during her time earlier on in her career. So it's this very much let's take care of each other as much as we want to take care of the client. So this is a mission that you could say any company in the world could have, you know, Time Warner Cable, Amazon, but it wouldn't be as true to them, perhaps. You know, we very much own and live this. It's believable for us. It's how we've been able to find the right employees who also embrace that mindset and continue to live it 20 years later.
Exactly, because we understand we wanted a strong corporate culture because we know there's a lot of hard work to be done at IKEA. So that it's not just nose to the grindstone, but it's nose to the grindstone, but it's not altogether unpleasant. You know, it's a good feeling. Yes, we're working towards the common goal. There's going to be some hard work here, but there's going to be some reward along the way as well. So how have we found the types of people to fulfill this, serve the client beyond expectations in everything we do? So here we got, the IKEA cult. Sure. Here's a list on screen of some of the programs that we have that help to make up the culture. These are some of the more purposeful things that we do here. You know, we have a pumpkin carving contest at Halloween time. We have a walking contest in early fall. Smoothie Tuesdays for health and wellness. These types of things, you might look at it and think, all right, people at IKEA, when do you ever work? Lord knows, my wife asks me sometimes, when do you have time to work? Because, you know, now you're carving a pumpkin at home and you're doing Secret Santa. But we understand that for each one of these, there's certain meaning behind it, and also we don't want to be like everybody else. This culture helps us to attract a certain type of person who will be bought into our culture and to the work we do. So if you look at these individual items the Smoothie Tuesday, health and wellness, you know, it's a little bit of energy there, and we have one of our employees is very into it. She comes up with these recipes, and it's a nice little break. The holiday card contest, you know, that we send out to colleagues and things like that. That's open to anybody to come up with the concept. Snow Day Friendly works on a couple of different levels here. You show that the company cares because we will say, hey, bad blizzard came in, stay off the roads, you know, you can work from home, no problem. But at the same time, we're Snow Day Friendly in that bring the kids in. They're off school, but you need to be in. Bring in. We got lots for them to do, and honestly, when the kids are in, it's kind of a different wrinkle to the day. So all of these things help to, I think, enhance the work product. You know, it's not just fun for fun's sake, even though it feels like it at the time, but there's all these things that kind of back it up so that we're not just this vanilla company. We have this certain wrinkle in what we do.
And you know, we talked about making sure that it never goes stale. We have a culture committee, an actual group. It's a cross-departmental mix of employees from all three of our departments, account service, creative, and optimization, a mix of both those employees who have been here for 6, 7, 8 years, as well as those that are maybe a little newer, so that we're getting a nice mix of ideas and opinions and perspectives. The culture committee is responsible for making sure that these ideas that come to life, do they fit, do they not fit? They're really charged with protecting the IKEA culture. And the two people who are not on the culture committee would be our CEO and our president. And we like to think that's because we want the culture to be a part of what the employees are looking for from the workplace, not what the leadership or the management is pushing down. It's very much an organic feeling here of how the culture can keep feeding itself.
Yeah, and part of what's on this list on this slide here are, like I said, it's more of the purposeful, the more traditional, the more expected things that we do. Walking contest is every year. But we've also do some of these unexpected drops on occasion, that surprise people, but it's really not that surprising when they receive something. One example is, for the first time at the beginning of this year, we've come back from Christmas break, so we want to energize them for the new year. You're back in the office. What are some things that could help motivate? So the culture committee came up with a desk drop that was a little bag of essentials that spoke to energy and just getting back in the groove for a new year. A bag with some chapstick because it's cold, with hand warmers also because it's cold, but hand sanitizer because it's cold and flu season, an energy bar, and so on. This was a new idea, and people would come back to the office and see this on their desk, and it would be, oh yeah, this is a nice surprise, but it's really not that surprising that this happened here at IKEA. And that's what you want to have with the foundation, that, it's a risk sometimes. You do a desk drop, and could it fall flat, or would people look on it with cynicism? In this case, it's not the case, because people sort of know what to expect, and it's like, oh yeah, this is a nice thing. I like that IKEA did it. It makes sense.
And it shows, an example like that shows that you get your employees. That's huge. To show that you understand your employees and they feel valued is a very critical point of a culture.
Now, all of this, we said, our values help to drive our culture. So these are the 10 values that IKEA lives by. Connecting, authenticity, collaboration, balance, transparency, believe, thinking, acceptance, kindness, and surprise. Now, when Jan, our founder, started this company 20 years ago, she did not write all these on a piece of paper. I mean, these are something we came up with a few years ago when we said, all right, what are the IKEA values? But you could say that these are the values that we have lived by since the beginning. It makes sense. It's not something that's unexpected here.
Yeah, and this list of words isn't ownable to IKEA. I mean, any other company could have these, similar values, same words exactly, but it's how we define those and how you would define those values for yourself and your organization that matter and make them yours. So authenticity for us is celebrating who we are and sharing it with others. But authenticity could mean something completely different for another organization. We take these very seriously. It was a lot of work for our culture committee to, even get it narrowed down to 10, but also what is that proper definition for how we define those for us here at IKEA. The more you can establish, the less you have to change or explain yourself later on. So we wanted these to be very clear so that employees understood the values the company stands for and that they could also get behind them and embrace them as well. We'd like to think it would be easy, just write about yourselves, but there is a science to it, and our advice is definitely look at it through multiple lenses and look for employee feedback. If you don't already have a set of values defined, start to get that feedback so that you can start to connect with those employees and what they hold close to them.
Yeah, and part of it beyond establishing the values themselves, which you do, but if I was just to flip back here and ask you, okay, what were those 10 values that we just read off? It'd be hard to remember. Maybe you get a couple. I think I remember transparency and something about service, and was it smart? Oh, it was thinking. So we understand at IKEA, okay, you don't just put the list out, distribute it, and expect people to remember. You want to have these values ingrained in our decision-making, but what are some ways that people will remember them more? So one of the things we've done here at IKEA is we've created IKEA Values Awards, which every month or two, anybody at the agency can nominate a peer, a colleague, for one of the awards. I could nominate April for authenticity and give a reason why. It's a written nomination, it could be 50 words, 100, or whatever it is. And then at an all-agency meeting, because we have them on, it could be every month, Jan will read the nomination and announce who that particular Values Award winner is, which is great. People like getting those awards and that sort of thing. But to take it further, how are people going to remember what these values are? Each winner is given a small placard that has the value, the particular value they won for on it along with their name. And that placard is to be displayed in their work area. So some people have won a couple, they win them, of course you're going to put it up in your work area so that then the whole office itself, it's almost like a billboard throughout the office of these different values. So it's just subconsciously getting into people's heads. You know, oh yeah, that you won for collaboration, and you just remember it. And hopefully it becomes a little more second nature when we are making decisions based upon these values so that we don't have to go through the checklist of values. It's a little more ingrained in what we do.
So if you're thinking, well, we don't have a list of core values yet, there are some things that you can start with. You know, perhaps these questions asked to your employees. You know, what draws you to the organization? What makes the workplace culture unique? Is there something that we do better than anybody else? And even the question of what should we be doing better than anyone else? You know, these questions might help spur some initial thinking. I wouldn't suggest that the new founded company values are going to suddenly jump off the page when you read your employees' responses, but it should give you a starting point. If your company already has a list of values, then it's very important to continue to validate those values, perhaps annually, by gathering feedback. And you can kind of bucket it into three areas, one being exposure. Are new hires exposed to those values early on during onboarding? Do your current employees even know about the values or where to find them? Could a job seeker or a customer find the list on your company website or any of your marketing materials? From an understanding standpoint, you know, could you go back and verify that your values are clearly defined? Would employees agree with those company values, or do they still find them important? And then from an action standpoint, are employees living those values out on a day-to-day basis? And are the leaders and managers, do their actions align with those company values?
Okay. So with this discussion on company values, what methods are you using to measure employee engagement? Are you using surveys, focus groups, annual performance reviews, other, you know, maybe you're just going by your gut? Or E, we don't track engagement at all. All right, so we'll give you a few seconds to give an answer. All right, so the answer rising to the top there is A, surveys. It's something we use at IKEA as well, and you can see some of the results that we got there. Okay. All right, as we get close to wrapping it up.
Yeah, we have, you know, 7 key takeaways that to conclude this we'd like to get you thinking about. First, you know, being separation of culture and work is definitely a myth. They are very intertwined. There's definitely a reason for the pizza party. We know the reason behind that would be you want employees to feel appreciated and valued, and of course why? Because we want to make sure that they help fulfill those company goals and that energy can keep feeding off of one another.
Yep. Number 2, culture does affect the bottom line, positively or negatively, if the culture is positive or negative. A study by the Great Places to Work Institute, you know, found that companies in the Fortune 100 best companies to work for had a stock market performance double that of all S&P 500. Now take that with a grain of salt, but the underlying premise is there, you know, happier, more energetic, more engaged employees can, you know, if it's not a causal relationship, there is an effect there that they are performing pretty well. You know, and part of it is if you look at the value, if people are more energetic, more engaged, they're coming up with better ideas, they're more productive, it just goes to say, you know, revenue should be affected as well.
The right culture definitely requires the right people, probably a no-brainer, but we definitely believe in interviewing is so important because you can tell a person's qualifications in probably 10 minutes, but you make sure you have to interview for the proper fit. What are some of those key words that would kind of come out through some of the questions in the interview? You know, here at IKEA, we like to look for someone that's, you know, using a lot of we did this, or we worked on that, versus I, because we do have a very strong sense of collaboration and are looking for someone that would come in and right away be a team player. So are you starting to kind of get a feel for the sort of passion and energy that the employee or the candidate would bring to the role? And it's more than just having that stellar resume. It's making sure that from a culture standpoint, they would be a nice fit and complement to the existing culture in place.
Number 4, you want to get buy-in from employees on the culture without too much, folks, sell it. You don't want to look heavy-handed, or here's what the corporate culture is going to be, live it, move on, that sort of thing. You almost want to, sell it in, and that they buy in so that it's their choice, their prerogative, that they may not even realize they've made the choice to buy in. It just went without saying. Like when I started at IKEA, I saw these different things they were doing. I really liked it. I didn't make this conscious choice to say, I like this culture. I just knew it was the right fit for me.
Number 5, the right culture creates, builds, and drives energy. Energy is crucial. Energy gets the juices flowing. You're able to play off of each other. You can bring each other up, contributes to more wins, more success, positivity. It probably sounds very cliche, but a positive vibe goes a long way. Of course, people will have their down days and will vent and have bad days. It won't be all rainbows and sunshine, but it's a matter of keeping those lows from getting too low, and having the right culture can help build up the energy again.
Yeah, and paying off that, number 6, energy drives thinking and winning innovation. It's the idea that a good culture can get people in the zone, if you will, where things seem to be falling into place, where you're more awake. There's that energy going. It's when Kyrie Irving on the Cavs is just draining every shot. He's in the zone. Well, that could also be true at your company as well. Ideas are just bouncing back and forth off of each other. We're having some good conversation. It's very positive, and it's leading to good things.
And number 7, winning makes everyone happy. Yes, it does, and it keeps the cycle going. Happy and happiness and winning breeds energy, and energy leads to more winning, and so on. And winning helps to foster more energy, more desire to engage, maybe even more confidence in your employees.
Yeah. So finally, this is the end where, there's the big, impassioned, final play here. But you might be thinking, all right, is it too late to get a corporate culture that's energized, or can we really change it? Are we too far down the path? But it's never too late to develop, a corporate culture that's the envy of your peers, and is right for your company. Whether you're brand new or you've been in the business so long that you may have issued the first purchase order, for fire or something like that. Getting an energized culture, it's reachable. Of course, there's a lot of hard work to do at the beginning, however, to make it feel seamless to your receptive audience, the employees.
Your values help drive the culture. Having a defined set of values that people know and understand, and which get ingrained in their heads and hearts, this is where the consistency is really key. Helps help you make decisions based on your values. And the more you do it, the better it becomes ingrained in your culture, and then you can just start to do it without even thinking. It just starts to happen.
Yeah, you own it, live it, believe in it, and don't change it every 6 months. If you feel it's not working, give it some time, or just make little tweaks along the way. Understand that you have an audience that is so diverse. April mentioned the 3 generations here. You had boomers and Gen X and millennials, the Gen Z on the way, but also there's people who want different things out of their workplace. It's not just a paycheck, though for some it may be, but for others it's, I want to work with people I like and I'm friends with, or I want to do work that is rewarding, or I want to be appreciated. So taking all these factors into account, if that's what your employees are looking for, try to hone the culture that helps to pay that off.
And don't forget to look to your past to see if you've actually been following your values the whole time. At IKEA, our values have officially been down on paper for a few years, but we've been long living them way before that, from the day the company began, more than 20 years ago. This means you have a foundation for values, and then more team members will be willing to get on board. And last but not least, don't be something you're not. GM knew that they weren't Google. They didn't put ping pong tables everywhere or set up auction bars in every office, but they knew how to shake it up without causing an earthquake. So find the right mix that works for you and where your organization is.
Yeah, and it can be, fun too, because it's not always so hard and fast. It's a subjective thing, and you're also reacting to the type of corporate culture you already have. It's just enhancing what makes it special and different.
So this was what we would call maybe a medium to high level look at corporate culture. It's probably about every slide could be a webinar in and of itself, but we wanted to get you thinking about it, in this case, culture, just a little bit more. We're always happy to discuss this, even more so on a one-on-one basis, so never hesitate to reach out to us here at IKEA. We appreciate your time today, and thank you for joining us, and at this time we would like to open it up for any of your questions.
All right, cool. A couple of questions came in. We'll address the first one. It says, how do you help culture when morale is low? What builds it back up? Is it trust or is it engagement?
I could probably make an argument that it's both, but you can challenge me on this, Mike. So I think trust is first and foremost, because I would hope that the leadership in place has perhaps set a pattern, or a pattern where there is trust to deliver on what it is they've been saying. But I think it would have to start with kind of reevaluating where the company is, kind of trying to pinpoint why morale might be low. Is it something that you can tie back to a particular impact on the business, or something that's happened in your industry? Is it something within just the four walls of your organization, and kind of starting to peel those layers back to kind of get to what might be the cause for the low morale, and then looking for ways that perhaps by kind of going back to your values and square one, how you could start to build that back up.
Yeah, your values and even the culture you've helped to establish should be able to help when times are tougher. Why is morale low? Like April said, is it outside forces or things like that? But almost prepare the culture and values for if times are bad. It's easy when times are good, and like you said, everybody is happy when things are going good. But when morale is lower, trust in the values. Don't panic either. If morale's low, don't think, oh my gosh, we need to blow things up, or we really need to make a big push here. Trust in what you've created, and I'm with April. It's trust and engagement at the same time, but I would engage the right people. You probably have those ambassadors at your corporation that people listen to and are just drawn to. Those are the ones who can kind of get the engagement happening and build up that trust there. All right. Another question just popped in. I recently read an article that was critical of the idea of interviewing for a culture fit because of the implication it can have on diversity in terms of people and opinions/experiences. Thoughts on this from the IKEA team?
Yeah, I mean, I could see how that might perhaps you would start to, we talked about and joked about the IKEA cult. Perhaps. We do still have a lot of very different and diverse personalities here. We like to have what we might call friendly debates at times about different topics, so it's not so much kind of squashing diversity, we think, in the way that we interview and ask those cultural fit questions. It's more about making sure we have team members who embrace the way we work, how we work, and how we service our clients. We have found right away that if we have someone on board that perhaps doesn't embrace our values or adhere to the same service model that we have in place, that it stands out right away, not just with each other as coworkers, but even with our clients. They start to sense that perhaps this person isn't exactly living up to the IKEA way of doing business. So I'd like to think that you would still get diverse opinions, backgrounds, but also those who definitely would still adhere to your values and make sure that they're being a champion for what the organization stands for.
Yeah, if we're interviewing for a culture fit, we understand what our culture is, but we're not looking to have robots. When I'm interviewing somebody, I'm not looking for somebody who thinks like me. Oh, perish the thought sometimes. I like to see somebody who's given back a little bit or has a different perspective on things, but would still understand, yes, there's a certain goal we are looking for as an agency. Beyond, yes, we're satisfying the client, but what are the ways we can do it? And that's where we're looking for that type of culture, that upbeat positivity, enthusiasm, energetic, those types of things. Then I think you can get a lot of different people even with those traits. All right. Another question. How do we get our leadership to be more aligned in demonstrating our culture for employees? That's a good one. Like here, we have our leadership. We lead by example, or we like to think we lead by example, understanding that there's not a big generation gap between us. I'm the old man here, and I'm 42, but I think we have to just live it ourselves and be all in with it. I think sometimes people will look to leadership, and sometimes you're looking for cracks. Are they practicing what they preach here? Is this the type of leadership that is pulling people along and is reflecting it, or are they just giving it lip service but making exceptions for themselves?
And if you're finding that the leadership perhaps isn't living the values or representative of the culture, you might want to even look to who are those employees that you work with most closely and starting to find ways that you build culture and some rapport and amongst each other, and find ways that you can start to build each other up and help with morale, and making sure that, the team that perhaps you're working closely with, or perhaps you're the manager of them, that they're adhering to the values that are in place.
Yeah, and even if, say you're in leadership, and try not to show even uncertainty. Maybe you're not 100% sold in on the transparency value, but understanding how it's defined for your company, you will be all in, or you need to be all in, so that, your charges, the other employees can be, bought in such a way. All right, this is what we're living to, if you will. Okay. I think we're good. I think if no more questions, this was a pleasure from our end. I hope we gave you something to think about. That's the purpose of this webinar series. There's some answers, but there's probably some questions and inquiries to bring up, just to look at the corporate culture you have, if it's in a good place, what sort of tweaks, help, or maybe even confirming some things you already knew.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.